Hi everyone, so it's been a really long time since I last posted a video, and I thought it was about time I showed you some kind of update. Part of the reason it's been so long since I posted an update is simply because I haven't worked on the car in a really long time. In fact, the footage in this video is from when I last worked on the car back in November. But I thought it was about time that I shared that footage with you because as of this weekend I have started work on the car again and progress is being made. So first of all, I'm going to let you watch the footage from November so you can get an update on where things are at, and then I'll give you a further update at the end of the video. Hello and welcome back. It feels like it's been a really long time since I last was talking to a camera, and well, that's because it has been a really long time since I was last talking to a camera. So bit of an update for you on everything. Obviously the RX-8 has gone. Sold that back in the summer, and it's now actually been replaced kind of by an R53 Mini Cooper S, which is what I'm driving now. I say kind of because although it's my car, it's not really my daily driver. As you all know, I work from home, so I don't have a daily driver, but my wife uses it a lot because we've moved house. So she was daily driving the X5, and the X5 now isn't really suitable for her daily commute, so she tends to use the Mini instead. So on that point, yeah, I used to be a mile away from Steve Walford, or less than a mile. I'm now 25 miles away from Steve Walford. Why is that an issue? My car's there. So when we moved house, Steve kindly offered to have the car for me and get it on the dyno. We were ready for dyno, and you know, the idea was he was then going to be able to trailer it over to the new place. A couple of issues with that. First of all, the car is not ready to come back. There's problems with it, so load of stuff to go and do on it today. So plan for today is I'm heading over to Steve Walford's now, and we have loads of stuff to do. So issue mainly is heat management. You know, with no bonnet on, the car is getting ridiculously hot on the dyno, and that's not because the dyno cell is warm, it's just the car is warm. Now this was an issue that, you know, wasn't necessarily completely unexpected. I'd hoped that it wouldn't happen, but it's happened. So I have a few solutions in mind. First of all, we can make some changes to the coolant routing on the engine. That should help improve the circulation, and so we're going to do that. We're also going to make some modifications to the way the coolant is routed to and from the turbo. Hopefully that is also going to make some improvements. We're also going to add an oil cooler. So I had an oil cooler sat around for ages waiting for me just to buy the fittings, so I've now bought the fittings and we're going to fit that. And finally, we're going to change from that big intercooler to a charge cooler setup. The biggest reason for that is so we can get better efficiency out of the radiator for the main coolant system. So today we've got all the bits. We're going to go and start working on the car, and all being well, we'll get everything fitted. There'll be no problems, and we'll be able to get the car back on the dyno and start making some more progress. So I'm on my way over there now to get all of these parts fitted. The second problem with the car was the boost wasn't holding properly. We're running it on the dyno just on actuator pressure, which should have been 0.8 bar or about 12 psi. What we found was we were only getting about 8 psi, and so that suggested that we needed to increase the preload on the wastegate actuator. So we did that, and then we managed to pull 10 psi, but the boost wasn't stable. It was going up to 10 psi, dropping down to 6 psi, back up to 10 psi, all through one pull. Bit more investigation into that. It either meant we need more preload, or that there's a problem with the diaphragm on the wastegate actuator. So I've got a spare wastegate actuator. It's only a 7 psi one. It's an original OEM Subaru one that I know works. So I'm taking that over as well. We'll chuck that on and see if that means we get stable boost. we can also compare the length of the actuator rod to make sure that we're getting similar levels of preload. If the rod on the 0.8 bar, the 12 psi actuator, is longer, it means that we're less likely to be able to get as much preload onto the actuator spring, and so we may need to shorten the rod. But at the end of the day, it may also just be broken, it may need replacing, and that may be another part that we're going to have to order and fit at a later date. So, sorry that this isn't a dyno video showing you, the amazing power the car is making, because at the moment we can't put the boost in it to make that power because of the heat issues and the boost issues. However, what we've got so far has impressed us both. It's not been quite what we expected, but it's made good power across a really wide rev range, and it still likes to rev, which it sounds, well, you heard the last video, and that wasn't even revving it as high as it will go. So I'll stop waffling there, and we'll cut to Steve Walford's. This is how the car is sitting now. Main change since you last saw it is the addition of the big wooden splitter. Other than acting, as a splitter, it also acts as a mounting point for the radiator, the intercooler, the nose cone, and also for the bodywork. But the intercooler is going, and we are making a load of changes to that setup. And these boxes are everything that is going on instead. Charge cooler is mocked up, it just needs some brackets making. 2 rad system, mostly done, again needs a couple of brackets making. Oil cooler in place and just needs bolting down to the splitter. Electric water pump for the charge cooler system, just needs bolting down and some wiring running. But it's mostly there, ready to start up again, and hopefully this will have solved our problems. So as you can see from the video, there's some big changes been made to the basic setup. One of the interesting things I did find and didn't mention in that footage was the bottom rad hose on the original radiator was actually pinched closed, and so that was potentially the cause of the overheating problems from the beginning. The changes that were made to the routing of the coolant system are all going to help anyway. They were all things that were on the cards potentially to be done in the future, so no bad will come from what's been done. It is an interesting point though, if you use a Honda Civic alloy radiator like the ones that I use, don't assume that they're all the same in terms of the angle of the inlets and outlets. That's what caught me out. So the one I had been using and the one I'm now using as a radiator for the charge cooling system has a different angle on the bottom outlet than the one that I'm now using, which is the same thing but thicker apparently. So the one on the original one just came out straight, the one on the thicker one comes out at a very slight downward angle, and it's that slight downward angle which meant when I put the radiator in the same setup as the one before it just caused that pipe to kink, and obviously that's going to cause some issue, if not all of that overheating issue. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, I have now been back working on the car this weekend, and the car is now ready again to go on the dyno. Now potentially this could turn into another fault finding exercise. We don't know for sure whether or not the boost issues we saw last time on the dyno were to do with the actuator or not. We're hopeful that it was, and that this time we're going to be able to get a good run on the dyno. Of course, though, the actuator that's fitted now is only a 7 psi one, not a 12 psi that was on there before, so we're going to have to run lower boost than we originally intended. So we're not going to be able to go to the full 20 psi that this engine has been built to run. It means we're not going to get a final figure on the car just yet, but it will give us a really good indication of what it's capable of and the kind of power figure we'll see when we do run at 20 psi. So all being well, when I post next week's video, it's not going to be a list of things wrong, it is going to be a BHP figure. It's only going to be a BHP figure at 14 psi, but that should still be pretty good. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you're crazy, but you know, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click the subscribe button for notifications on when the next video comes out, and that's going to be the exciting one.
In the beginning there was house.